Hey, 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 Laura J here with an amazing gallery of beautiful souls from varying parts of Canada presently. And I wanted to just take this first opportunity of the meeting being recorded to say a huge thank you to each of you who are in view, or even if we can't see you and your screen, it is still a great opportunity to be together and for our energies to mix. And then for Peaceful Inner Warriors United to figure out where all of the people are best able to sit in a seat on the bus that will allow us to trust ourselves enough to not just ride the whole time, but also take the lead too. Because I think that that's the biggest opportunity we have here. So oftentimes I think we've been waiting for someone to give us permission to do our mission when no one can actually do that for us. We have to choose to take the reins and just go through it and do it. And sometimes we need one another to help us break through those terror barriers where we come to the edge of the comfort zone or growth zone and we don't know how to break through without feeling like we're going to die. Because to the ego, a part of us is going to die when we break through that comfort zone or that growth zone and come to a new known. It is the death of the old self in place of the self that knows what it is like to push through. And so there is a terrified part of us that fears its own demise when we grow. And so I am so excited to be here together because I believe that we are the best souls that are here to do the impossible by actually seeing the I am possible in that. When we actually put the apostrophe of we in there, because it's the I am in me is the one that can see the we that we are if we come together and remain in the first person, which is where our power is, as to why there's a third person agenda, which is the third person has a second person, which is the agent or middleman in between us who can take the office of man or woman to step into the public when we need to act or follow through with an act. And then when we invite a second party or an agent to then enter the dynamic, we put a middleman between us and our direct connection, which actually moves us into the third person, which is the legal pronoun, which is why, from a programming perspective, there's a gendered perspective or a pronoun agenda, as we've all seen with they, he, her, them, theirs. Those are third person pronouns. That if we don't understand that shift that takes place when we are shifted out of first person into third person in our own story, the danger of that. And so I want to really help people understand that our youth are being programmed to call themselves a third party in their own affair because they choose to brought in a middleman, which was of the air, which is the A of law. And I have so much insight to share where the legal fiction is concerned that I do it in a way that is often over people's heads, which is not helpful because the information needs to land in a way that's practical. And I believe the clan is what can help us ground the information and break it down to put the cookies on the lowest shelf, in the words of John Maxwell, who Colin and I met through the connection of. So to put those cookies on the lowest shelf means that we break it down in ways that I might not consider, but you do. And so when we come together in groups like this, right now I am the one that is offering a monologue because I have ideas to share, and ultimately we need to be guided to a point, but then we need to also be free to take the reins. Because just like the A of air within the law is one thing, we are the heirs of the kingdom that all things are under the jurisdiction of. So when we start to understand jurisdiction and we start to understand authority and we start to understand our power position in the present moment, all of these things which each of us can break down using our own stories, then we empower others through our example. And that's the way that we actually bring about the change that we came here to bring about as the best players on the field of consciousness, which is what each of us are. We're the players on the field of consciousness. And when you go to war, you don't send your weakest links. You send your strongest players, your warriors. That's who we are. We who are on screen now, and you who are listening to this now and asking, do I qualify? Yeah, you do. And you don't need permission from anyone outside of you because you're on a mission, just like I am and every single one of us in this screen. So my desire has been to find ways for us to unite and then figure out where our best spot within the tribe is. And what is required is a cultural training program. So we need conflict resolution skills training. We need communication training. We need to look at, for instance, the fruits of the spirit and the virtues and values-based leadership training of those principles broke down. Because we were told it was going to be a war of principalities, were we not? Within a book that works in tandem with the Justinian Codex upon which the legal fiction is based. Well, this battle of principalities is about who's going to be the principal storyteller in our story. So the principalities go back to the virtues and the values and getting back to what is real and what is solid. And in my lack of relatability and the challenges that have come with being so heady and going over people's heads and missing their hearts, at times for parts at least of the message, it's an opportunity for us to just come back into the moment and figure out why we're here, what we're doing, why it matters. Getting back to our why allows us to cut through the what that gets us in our heads of the how. And if we can be back to the why instead of the how, that will keep us in the small mind of trying to control how everything happens, it's going to be very different than if we actually figure out how we're contributing to the community that we are setting a culture for, seeing the cult you are at the foundation of culture. The spell is there for us. And we don't necessarily want to think that we are part of a cult, but the reality is, if we've ever been part of a culture, which we can't help but be, there's a culture there. So we're either seeing the values and virtues play out culturally because that was the cult we chose to rally with around that selected BS of belief systems, or we're going to get what we've been fighting against and protesting and resisting. But what happens to what we resist persists. What we resist persists. Yet we've been resisting that which persisting is pissing us off. And we ask, why? Because we keep feeding that which is chasing us. And we don't need to, because the entity is a fiction that's only real because we've empowered it and we've voluntarily consented to go along with mandates. When I choose the man I date, and if anyone chose to say, I need to date a different man than the one I choose, well, I'm going to say he or she is causing me harm because I already chose for myself. And that imposition through a mandate of which man I can date is going to cause me harm, which means they're choosing to do that regardless of whether it was an order they were told to fulfill within their public position or not. So when we get down to the clarity of what a mandate is, and we think of it as ridiculous as which man I can date, as the way that we can relate to what a mandate means, that's when we take our power back, I believe. When we start coming together and we break things down to the ridiculous, things seem less ridiculous because the oblivious becomes obvious. So while I was telling that, I completely lost my train of thought and wove back and tried not to acknowledge that that had happened. So I don't know whether you noticed or not. Maybe. Stu laughing. I love it. But I share this because I think that we just need more opportunities to come together in community and be real. And to say, I don't fully have a script. I do have some opportunities that I've been trying to write out in order to have a game plan, because order and structure is how we have that strong foundation. So this is really like setting the pillars, figuring out our giftedness, looking at our experiences, and then reflecting how a younger version of us would benefit from wisdom this version of us could offer them. Like in sales and marketing, they oftentimes say that you 2 years ago, say 3 years ago, because everybody's life entirely changed when the certificate of X identity death kicked off with COVID. So 3 years ago, that version of you at the beginning of this insanity, that version of you, if that was your ideal client, what were they going through? By reflecting on what you went through. And then it's the feel, felt, found model of like, you seem to feel this way, and you identify the feeling, and they can say yay or nay because you said you seem instead of you are. And then I felt that way. So you're relating with them and you're letting them know that that's a familiar feeling to them. So you feel this way, or you seem to feel this way. I felt that way at this time, and then I found this. So that's the feel, felt, found model that is really good for rapport building, because then you show them, you know where they're at, you show them that you've been there, and then you found a solution that might be beneficial to them, but you're not going to push it on them because it's only your best option. Lori, it's awesome to have you join us tonight. Thank you for showing up. It's amazing to see who are showing up. And we never know. But if we don't host it, if we don't try, we are not going to know. We are not going to know who needed to be able to come together with amazing people like what are here tonight. If we don't schedule the meeting because it's not laid out. It's just like actually on Saturday, yesterday, and today, in fact, I tried to have the bunker day. I was in Bowmanville. I was trying to get a filming today, and I couldn't pull it together in time, so I had to cancel it. So I did have to cancel an event for this weekend, but I still hosted this call tonight on the same weekend that another event canceled, only because I didn't take the first perceived failure personally. I just persisted. And so I don't know who needs to hear that, where something you're working on didn't pan out the way you thought. But like, this still happened tonight only because I allowed it to. I called the meeting and I showed up. And if anyone else has words you'd like to share, please do feel free. I would love for these meetings to be an opportunity for us to come together in community. And I know in a first meeting where we're all kind of showing up and the message said, Laura's got news to share and updates. So I appreciate I'm leading this meeting more. But what I would love is for meetings like this to happen on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, so that we don't feel like it's just a matter of showing up to the meeting, though sometimes that accountability does help. I think figuring out and finding out what the community needs. I get overwhelmed with weekly meetings sometimes. especially if it's like a coaching context, because then it's just like I feel like I haven't even been able to finish what I was said I would do in the last session, and a week's gone by and like we're back in the next session, and then I always feel behind. So for me, once a week is sometimes too much, but I like bi-weekly. In 2 weeks I can accomplish a lot and I can track a lot, and I just don't need to necessarily share it all as I go, but I have the option. We just need to really figure out what is going to work best for us. But having meetings on Sunday evenings, I'd love to know how that fits for you who is watching this and who is here. So Sunday nights, I think, could be a really great way to start the week off in a positive way. Towards the end of the evening, I used to have sacred self-compassion services where every week, first 12 of those weeks, I read The Artist's Way by Campbell. I forget her first name, but Julia Cameron. And The Artist's Way is fantastic because we're all artists who think out of the box in a different way, like what any creator does. So working our way through different exercises to strengthen skills is what I'd really love for us to be able to do. So November 10th and 11th, in terms of an in-person event, I would really love for everyone that is able to get to Blackstock at Soul's Path, where Bev and Nancy have an amazing retreat center, which Soul Shine Festival was hosted at, as many of us who are here are well aware. But I want to have a filming day, a documentary day. So basically, it's a casting call for characters to be ourselves. But it's also about recognizing that our emotions have personas and personalities of their own. I have that book, but didn't work through it. Which book was that, Lori? Yeah, so it's a casting call for characters to play themselves, and then to see that our emotions have personalities and personas. And that when we start to come together and to know how to hold space responsibly for energy, and we start talking about energy in practical terms, I think that is when we have the opportunity to stop having our emotions used against us, which is going to impact everything. Like, this is a vibrational game, and the way that we win this is vibrational as well, I believe, which means to shift the density that keeps us in a lower frequency state. Megan, yeah?
Yeah, I thought raising the hand would just help. What you were just saying about what did you just say? It's my memory.
The frequencies or the vibrational game and the
Yeah.
density.
So it's just I'm making notes while you go, and there was a that I said, like, hold an event, and if no one shows to, you keep hosting the meeting because that space is created, and the presence of the meeting will spread.
Yeah.
Like I had my first ecstatic dance, and one person showed up, turned into a naming ceremony. That's what that was for. Second static dance, no one showed up. I danced by myself. Third one, 4 people, right? 4 people showed up.
Yes.
And so I realized that, like, it doesn't really matter who comes as long as you continue to do what you know that you're supposed to do. Yeah. And eventually vibration, right? And then we'll bring. So it's all about putting it out into the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing said about personalities, right? I've seen all of my different personalities. And each personality plays a role in the space that you're in, whether it's to be passionate and patient and quiet and listen, or if it's to be loud and demanding and strong, right? So these personalities are really important. They're not these multiple personalities that we need to push away, and find the right one, because there's a right one for every moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Thank you. And the more integrated we are, then the fewer barriers each of these energetic personalities need to have up between one another's awareness of each other. So I tend to think that if there is a complete disconnect in personalities, it's because one is so big it overtakes the others, and then it's just too much, it's overwhelming, and it borders then on abrasiveness, aggression, and all of the other negative experiences of too much or big energy.
Imbalance.
Yeah, imbalance.
Yeah, because a lot of it, you remind me, is, consistency, as you said, and the willingness to create it is kind of just showing up, or I always kind of go back to the Field of Dreams, I think it was. You build it, they'll come.
Mm-hmm.
Holding that space and
Yes.
believing it's going to happen, and just working at it, because we're always being tested and we're always being challenged, and we all have our own doubts or insecurities to work through,
Mm-hmm.
but also examples for people.
Yeah. Yeah. Like every single one of us who are here, I don't know whether we're aware of it or not, but literally every single one of us, I'm sure, have saved somebody's life because of something that we've said or did. We called at the right time, we went down a street, we smiled at someone, we did something. We literally have saved lives simply because of who we are in this world. And we discount that. And I was having a conversation that is very important to this conversation, in fact, the artist's way. Thank you for clarifying that, Lori. The artist's way is beautiful. Yeah. I was having a conversation yesterday with an elderly friend of the family, and it was so fascinating because as we were sitting with her daughter, my mom, and myself, there was a comment made about the times that we're in, and whatever it was, she made a little semi joke, but at the foundation of every joke is a hint of truth. And she commented on the maid service. And she said, "Oh, well, I think if it ever got to that, I'd take the maid service, which is the medical assisted in suicide, medical assistance in dying, maid." So the maid service, she kind of said that, and everyone else accepted it because that's the politically correct, the polite thing to do. It's the non-invasive, it's the non-challenging, it's the easier way to go, which isn't necessarily their conscious reasons for it, but I can appreciate why nobody else challenges it. But I feel I have a moral responsibility to challenge it because I got way too close to a situation that almost could have been the equivalent, and that was part of a soul contract that only the universe and my higher self and theirs could have possibly orchestrated, because of how it destroyed life as I knew it in order for me to have to rise back from the ashes of that experience of me. And what was I going to say? The maid service and all of this. I had no idea, and I don't think other people are talking about it, but I think we need to, in that if we leave early and we needed to make contact with someone that is going to hurt themselves or end their journey that they need to do things for early, because we don't do our part to get to meet them on the bridge that day or at the grocery store or wherever it is. If we take ourselves out of the game early and we don't fulfill our part, what if we come back into a virtual reality game experience where that gap never got filled, and we come back into a nightmare because we didn't do what we needed to do in this lifetime, because we felt isolated, we didn't feel like we could do it, pain started riddling our body. And actually at the beginning, there was a mention of a surgery and the recovery from that surgery. And I was going to mention that you can actually look up whatever the ailment was with German New Medicine. if that's of interest, because then you can actually find out what the German New Medicine recommendation for the psychological connection of the emotional elements are and how that connects to the physical. So it's a really well-rounded perspective of things, and you can get good synopses online. So just type in gallbladder and German New Medicine if that's of interest. Jordy Lishman is my partner, and he's been studying that from Ilse-Dora, who is the ambassador for the North Americas for German New Medicine that lives in Ajax. And so between being with him over the last year and his studying that modality over the last 15, I've come to see it as a valuable tool that I am still unfamiliar with, yet there is great value in. So I just only offer it in case it resonates. And if you have questions, I'm sure Jordy would be interested in answering more around German New Medicine, since it's a bit of a passion for him. But yeah, the maid service, if we actually think about it in terms of what happens if we leave before it's our time, because we didn't have the support system in place. And one of my things I've, over the last several months, recognized the sacred martyr archetype versus the scared martyr. And I've seen my own pattern of saying warriors need to be strong more than I need a bank account full of fiat currency that's going to be worthless when the markets crash and people's identities collapse with the changing of currency, and the fear unintentionally, right? But I have been fear mongering in a different way because my scared martyr has been leading the charge. And then this is where I bring in archetypes. And I say the scared martyr is the part of us that is afraid of something or running away from. But the sacred martyr is the part of us that lives for something. So it's the fear versus faith dynamic, but it's recognizing that every archetype is a familiar pattern that gets filled in with energy, either intentionally or unintentionally. And so if we start looking at archetypes, we start to see spectrums, which is where the hues of this color spectrum come into play. And then we start to see the hues are not the whole. They make up the whole together, but each hue uniquely on its own is not the whole thing, which is why humanism, I've discovered, is actually at the fount of our deception. Because we're so accustomed to being politically correct and calling ourselves human beings that aren't human doings, and we can do that wordplay, but the hue of man is not the whole man. And so this is what I really want to get back to. The whole man, the whole I stick plan, the holistic plan. I think when we come together as a clan, regardless of whether we subscribe to the concept of Turtle Island or any other belief system, mythology, mythos that has a storyline with the people that came before us connected to it, we all need to get grounded, and we also need to accept that we've all been lied to. Pro-social lies are why we tell children that Santa is real. Pro-social lies are where we lie for the benefit of someone else. We want to leave them in the magic of finding out later their parents lied to them about this huge thing that, like, you spent the entire year looking forward to, and now you expect me to believe that you told me the truth about everything else if you'd lie to me about something that big? That was my thought when I found out Santa wasn't real. It's like, what? I trusted you to tell me the truth, to guide me rightly. What do you mean you lied to me about Santa and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny? You know what I mean? Like, how did pro-social lies? But how confusing, yet how necessary in a culture where we're literally still living under the rule of Rome. It's just the fall of Rome was the division between church and state. So I don't mean to go into a side trail that's more informative rather than kind of talking about the coming together and going into the educational component of it. But I think that going back to our roots, it actually takes me to the docu-series and the documentary that the November 10th, 11th are part of, which is the reality of my empowerment as the real Rome that we are writing with our lives. So the reality of my empowerment is not just me, you are mine too when you own it without being owned. So we'll go into the usufruct and how it's the us you fruct until we saw that we're not going to stand by while people use our property or profit off of the use of our property, which is us, or that we're abused by those using our property and us. So that's the usufruct. And we're not going to be fruct anymore because we're going to come together and actually create the reality of my empowerment using our own story as the authorities, as the ones that show up on the game field, on the battlefield of life, where we see we are the gladiators in the Colosseum. And when we go back then to that, we can be empowered to be the stars of our own show, the main characters, and to write that story. So if you can come out on November 10th, 11th, I'm still trying to get the details firmed out, but I'd like it to be a workshop, like an ecstatic dance party on the Thursday night or on the Friday night beforehand, so that people can move into the energy and maybe even do some Mune Key gifting. The Mune Key rights are the seeds of empowerment that can be gifted into your luminous light body to help you stay in integrity within your own energy field. So like there are so many things and so many tools that each of us have between us that we can use. And so I don't know specifically how to pull it all together, but what I know is it will come together if we stick together, come together, and let one another know who we are, which is part of on the morning of the 11th, which we're going to call Remembering Day, because it's when we become members of our lives in a different way. We actually took responsibility and authority back for to be self-governing lawfully and to create this cultural reprogramming training and to offer workshops and opportunities to write a story we love living within a community that we actually know and love enough to contribute to. Like, what if we actually saw be the change you seek in this world was actually never about the bigger world, but to see that every single community we are part of is a different world. Your home life, that family life you've got, that's one world. Your professional realm, that's another world. Your faith community is another world. Every single world requires a different identity. And if we don't understand the basics of identity, then we've got a lot of entities feeding off of these 1D labels that we've taken on to define us, which then become the way the fines get laid on us too. So
that's well said, because you're coming back to the interconnectedness and the oneness, but the forest in a way that it's all connected, but diversity to the creation, because we need the diversity to have a creation.
yeah,
Or the chakras as well, the different levels that we all are part of, and the different or plants or instruments in a orchestra or something, that because we all have different skills or interests or knowledge that we could add at different points. That sometimes we are the student, sometimes we're the teacher, sometimes we're just the sharer, the healer, the healer, helper, leader, whatever it may be. And you're explaining quite well, kind of going back to that sense that, as you see the change, you're also the changes duplicating, like in the back of the correct term of currency in a way, the flow, the money, of really water and consciousness.
Yeah. Well, interesting, because the consciousness would be more the air element compared to the emotions of the water, though it's not to say that's not correct. It was just, that was where my mind went first, because it's just like, I thought the water was more the emotions.
Yeah, it's true, because I mean, I just talked to somebody a couple weeks, 2 weeks ago, I guess now, and he was tie into a little bit, and I forgot, but reminded me of like what he was saying at a young age. He was very good at mathematics because he knows patterns, and he talked about how memory is in the water, and we're mainly water. And then he explained the currency in the financial system comes from water, the current, the riverbank, the flow back to water, and water has a memory. But also, I guess consciousness is in that as well, but it's in the air. I mean, it's so many things, it seems, because it's like almost like the more you explain, the more you lose it. And I think that's what's happened with this English language, say, or the mind, the ego, whatever you want to say, is these terminology. They may argue over terminology, instead of like just recognizing and feeling, and just being more, just to be that connection and recognizing and honoring it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And this is where our emotions have been weaponized against us, because we haven't known how to deal with the super big personalities that trigger our nervous system. And then our nervous system goes into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, fornicate, F off kind of mode of just get away and shut down and no, I don't want to play with you. But then when we do that to ourselves, because of what we're putting ourselves into the midst of, and then the self-doubt, the self-sabotage, all of the ways we take ourselves down, all of that shows up, and that becomes the wall of the terror barrier that can stop us and then send us back to the comfort zone of what it meant before we tried. Except for, it's like the elastic band. Have you ever heard that your self-image is like an elastic band? It's like you can pull it back to an extent, but it'll either snap or spring forward, right? It's just like, or it'll stretch. But like the self-image is the elastic band on our potential, because we can only pull back enough to be able to launch forward so far as what our self-image will allow, because that is the image that allows us to actually choose to use our power to be the mage. So like going back, actually, Peter, what you had said about the air and the water, the pentacles and the swords are the other elements of the minor arcana within the tarot that tells the tale of the hero through the major arcana that represents significant life events, compared to the minor arcana with the different suits, the 4 different suits. Then the minor arcana are more day-to-day issues, compared to the major arcana, which are more monumental, life significant issues. So if you're getting all major arcana cards in a pull, then it can be because you're having a major transformation, whereas the minor cards reflect more day-to-day kind of adventures. But that just kind of takes you into the elements. And then it takes my mind into then the elements of law, and how the color of law or the color of right makes us change our answers. So you add a few elements, and then you change the whole thing, which goes back actually to Socrates and vitalism versus materialism. But this is why systems actually are necessary in order to do this, and then coming together for greater periods of time, but not in terms of time being the currency. It's the major ledger that determines how much time we have together, of course. But it's how do we make this the most effective and come together so that we can do the identity quest together, that we can actually go through who we wish to become as the magi that chose where to put the energy within our image. So you choose to create by default or design. Design that we get to choose is the one that we will use to guide us as like a vision board of sorts. That's the self-image. So that's what we need to actually create. And November the whole month is going to be around self-image transformation. So I'm working towards doing a challenge for it. And then the 10th, 11th will be part of that. But, and then I'll also be doing group coaching sessions for those that subscribe on Patreon, which I'm trying to build up just so that I have some support back for the value that I am doing my best to share. But everyone has a different means level to be able to share. And it's all like, we've all got skills that we're also called to bring to the table too. So it's figuring out how to get involved, and then what level of involvement, and figuring out it can't be about the money, but yet the money comes when we show up and do the work. So all of this is to say that November is about the transformation of self-image. The Soul Path event on the 10th, 11th, I want to be part of the documentary about how we not only harmonized mankind instead of the hues of mankind, or the hues of man-I-Tai. My identity too is what I refer to as humanity. But we started this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, my friend Jared Wade and I, out of Utah, because we created Album 22 because artists were shut down in terms of their ability to travel and create and perform. And so we created a space, and then amazing people showed up, and then we gave them a prize to keep showing up, which is exactly what needs to be created here. Because after 6 months of, well, I hosted the first meeting and I got challenged and realized I was fear-mongering unintentionally by trying to make sure they knew about what was going on. And, you know, I just wanted to make sure. So I was totally fear-mongering unintentionally. And Luna Keller called me out on it. And she has a song on Album 22 called Prophecy that is spectacular. So Luna Keller, Prophecy, look that one up. But she called me on it, and it was like, wow, iron sharpens iron. She cut me without even doing it in a malicious way or direct way, but totally smooth enough that I could see she was someone that could help me grow. And others also, but that was the moment that said, Jared, can we do another one of these? And so he said yes. And when more amazing people showed up, I said, okay, well, we got to give them a prize. How easy would it be to make an album? And he said, oh yeah, I can do that. And I said, okay, well, you look after that and I'll look after the meetings, and we'll make this happen. And we did. And 6 months later, we had Album 22, which you can find at album22.com if you wanted to go there. And then you can listen to the 22 songs on the first album, and then the 22 songs on the second album. And then I've been trying to launch Album 23, which will be the next part of this. And essentially it is likely needing to just be towards Christmas, but another album can easily be a project. We can easily create another one. And there's artists enough with the Soul Shine Festival. Like, we've got so many communities, we've got so many people that are so talented in this community that we just need to pool our resources and say, like, I'm a musician and I do this, and then team up with the other ones doing that too, and then we create something that's going to benefit others. And I think once we start connecting and figure out who's who, but not from a statusy perspective, you know, like, how do we have a less transactional and more relational type of dynamic that is innocent and intimate, and the intimacy of intimacy doesn't require sexuality to be part of it. In fact, we become the ones that say, you know, your private sex life is none of my business. I don't need to know your gender. You know, I don't need to be introduced with your sexual ingredients or details first thing as to how you want me to know you. Like, growing up, that wasn't the way that we were taught we were supposed to relate to one another. So why are we being forced to connect on our sex all the time? Because it's all BS. SECTS, the sex, are the sections of belief systems subscribed to by a minority within a larger majority. So the sex that we're really talking about here is actually our belief systems. And then when we start breaking it down in those terms, and we help those that are going down the path of trying to check one part of the whole spectrum of their expression possibilities by selecting a label that defines them, then if we can interrupt this by helping them see how limiting that is, when what is possible is unlimited and unwritten, which is what the common law is, that we can draw from any time, lest we be drawn into the public by letting someone else define who we are. If we don't create it, it will be created for us. So there's a lot to all of this, and I am so grateful to each of you for showing up tonight and contributing in the way that each of you did. And also, I would really love to know what skill sets you would love to be able to share. If there's a cultural training program, it's around conflict resolution, it's around communication skills training, leadership, practical skills, like musicians, how do you play an instrument? How do we help others get inspired to actually practice a practical skill compared to something that requires an intermediary or interface in order to engage with it? So thinking about what's real and what's really valuable, like practical, like homemaking, like how we actually run a household, practical things. I think that's part of the cultural training program. And then the energetic modalities that, you know, many of us have plugged into. How do we bring those to the table and make it so that it's not just about the profits, but we see there's a PhD, there's a pH in the profit. If we actually see the PhD is life itself.
But to add to what you're saying, I think really we look at money as so pinnacle, but it's just a tool. The most valuable thing really that we all use money for is health and wellness and resources. So basically, you want to say the support, the connection, the joy, the happiness. And then I guess with Tesla had this free energy, it's all there. It's just like you're bringing forth, how do we bring it together by breaking down these separations or this fear or lack of abundance? Because I feel like with what you're saying about the BS is all about our BS breaks separations. Because if you come back to people use common sense, they are more like-minded, then that's kind of where there's like that sparks growing that fire, maybe to say.
Yeah, and we're so used to connecting with like minds, we forget this mind and this mind are not the same mind. The conscious mind and the subconscious mind have very different capacities. One can feel the truth and the other can only rationalize the ration of lies.
Right, well said. Yeah.
I made a note here about that pro-social lies. Well, sorry. I started putting up questions, right? So this other thing that you said about, leading by example, basically is what came to what I heard. We can put these questions in people's minds instead of telling them the answer. And the question about the pro-social lies, but like what other pro-social lies do we live by that haven't been uncovered yet? What Santa is still alive in our lives that we haven't realized is not real.
Yeah.
So I always start with like the Interpretation Act versus the Webster's Dictionary. Like when you're reading this, are you defining it based on Webster's dictionary definition or based on the secret, the lie of Interpretation Act of like what it really means, what person really means, what Canada really means, what an individual really means, right? And once you start to go after the answer yourself, then it's easier. And you're talking about November 11th and Remembrance Day. And I was like, what is that day about? What are we really remembering? Are we remembering the sacrifice that others have made for another person? Or are we looking at the social obligation of fighting for political gain? Like, we all come together to remember people that have lost their lives, but why did they lose their lives? Is it based on societal obligation? And I think that we all really want to save other people's lives, and that's why we do it. So I made a little list here, like breaking free of societal obligations or breaking free of societal norms, practical skills, conflict resolution. Where do I fit in all this, right? And where do we all fit in our each individual skill or gift? And even back to that part where you mentioned of someone making a decision to end their own life, it's like, as a sentient being, death is a part of this physical life, and our death is already determined. When we make that decision, yeah, we haven't finished what we've already come here to do. So you'll come back to finish that, and it'll come back to finish that. You'll be stuck in this like a rerun, like a broken record, which is annoying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I love that I love that you asked that very candid and curious question of where do I fit into this? And it's just like I hear myself asking that question as well in terms of like a new opportunity, and it's just like I'm not really an expert in that or that or that or that. And it's just like, I'm a little jack of Jill of all trades. Like, you know what I mean? Like I've got modalities that like I've kind of morphed from many. And so I'm not really an expert, but like I'm the only one that does it because it's like just the way I do it. And so I say this in case anyone else is resonating with that experience of being so out of the box, you don't really know where you might fit. And it's just to say we don't have to put a box on it. All we need to do, I believe, where our BS or belief systems are concerned, are keep the foundation of what it means and then drop the walls of the words so then we can find connection where we would have found walls otherwise because we would think that we're talking about different things. And also, perfection is not required. Like we can only do as much as we can do, and we can only we can only actually figure it out by doing it. So it's like we only have the theoretical belief that we can do it until we're given the opportunity to do it. And sometimes we just need to seize the opportunity to do it. So if you've got an idea that we can collectively come behind and then get the youth involved, ultimately the stage that needs to be set is for the youth. They're the ones that are meant to use that stage. We're just preparing it so that it's safe enough for them to stand on without feeling like they've got a rope around their neck and the floor is about to go out from under them, which is essentially what the legal fiction does right now when we think that mandates are going to be in our interest and that public servants are not liable because the corporate umbrella protects them from any kind of reign because they're under the reign of a crown corpse that has a death agenda. So like that's insane. And we are feeling beings that care and want to contribute and are living in a toxic world that sometimes that seeps into our aura. So we need to be strong enough to make sure that that energy density can stay out of our auric field so we don't get pulled down into it, which is why part of the transformation of self-image experience next month is going to be inclusive of a special practice, which is an acronym that is a whole perspective of health, and then getting in people that have experience or skills within different energy modalities to be able to share your giftedness and bring it together so we develop friendships that ultimately are mutually beneficial. That's the desire for these opportunities, and I want to be respectful of the fact it's been an hour, and I really appreciate each of you for showing up tonight. And I'd love to know if anyone has more to add. I have more time, but I did put it down to say it was an hour, and I want to respect that. So if anyone is feeling the need to go on to your next opportunity of the evening, I understand. But I just want to say that and then open the floor.
Thank you for this opportunity, Laura, and looking forward to continuing it.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you as well.
Yes, thank you, Laura. And I was thinking we do fit in everywhere. It's just in some places we shine brighter. That's it. We fit in everywhere. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you could come. It was amazing.
Thank you for doing the thing, right? And I was going to chime in that we ask what our place is in all of this, and it's truly just to find ourselves and our strengths and our gifts and where they're needed, and reveal we are inside. And whether it's creating the space or leading the space or observing the space or taking notes of the space or absorb, letting it in. We all have a role. And so I thank you for creating the space and leading us in a group effort tonight.
Yay! Thank you. My
Yeah.
absolute pleasure. I'm so grateful that you could come, and I see the value each of you who are here have to offer. And I don't know the seat on the bus, but as I was saying that analogy, it's funny because as I was saying that analogy, it was just like, wait a minute, a bus only has one driver. Like, that is not the analogy that I think is appropriate most for this collective. But this is not a collective. Like, this is the thing. It's like we need to be wary of the collective consciousness that becomes the frequency net of consciousness that would cap us all. So there's just so many pieces to be aware of and be mindful of. Hope it works that you can come to the event, Lori. Yay. Yes, that would be amazing. Would love to have you there. Alan, same thing. If you are able to make it out, it'll be in Blackstock at Soul's Path, which is phenomenal. And Colin, I know you're out east, but it would be awesome to have you come. And the source is driving, absolutely, which is why we resource. We have the resources because we resource it. Crazy, isn't it? The word spells.
I want to say thank you for doing this and bringing us together and talking about these things that matter. And I don't know what my position is on the bus, but I've all kinds of time on my hands all of a sudden because I just retired and I'm looking to get into something that I believe in for once. Spend my time on creating community that like you said, cuts out the middleman, and I hope this is it. So keep me in the loop, and nice to meet you all. Hi, I'm Stu, and I'm looking forward to where this goes.
Amazing. Thank you, Stu. That's fabulous. I'm so grateful, and that is fantastic. Congratulations on your retirement. That is very exciting.
And my gift would be to put things, what I've always been told, even by like a clairvoyant once, was a lot of what you say, I'm not grasping. Like the language I'm getting a little twisted up in that, but I've always been told my gift is to bring people together, put people on the same terms, to kind of translate and understand what people need to hear to get the point. So I'll put my hand up for that seat on the bus.
Yes, thank you. Well, I need translation because you're not the only one that doesn't get all of it. That happens far more than I would like to admit. And even what I am willing to admit is far more than what I wish. So it's like, it's not about the admitting. I don't care so much about that. It's just, as a communicator, part of the responsibility is on the part of the communicator to help the one being communicated to and with to understand and comprehend the communication. So it's my duty to communicate at a level that others can receive it. And I know I'm over the heads of many and around. And so I need help. I need a translator to help, because Laurelese is essentially the language that I'm working on creating, or the language system, which is an L''oralese, because it's about the energy of the auric field and everything within it, which is all of what we are. And then the ability to lease the comprehension of the energetic system for as long as it serves you to do so. And if you don't wish to, by all means don't. But Laurelese would be the language the people could lease to wear the laurel tree of the crown of victory into town, so then the people know we win.
All right. My goal is to learn Laurelese.
Yay! Oh my God, that's amazing. I'm doing my best to share it out, and the translations and where the gaps are that I leave out for people to fall into, or however it goes. I appreciate being informed when it happens, so then I can learn where it happened and then not lead somebody into a gap or a trap again. So I say all of this to say I'm doing the best that I can, and I know each of us are, and I know that we are stronger when we are together, and I'm grateful that we got to be together tonight. So I really appreciate each of you for showing up. Yay!
Beautiful. I was just gonna ask, so how's the best way of asking, if you because you're putting forward like maybe for communication or instruments or something like that, is that like messaging you directly, or is that just kind of like putting that out towards like tonight, or what did you have in mind for something like that for building or working towards?
I'm just saying hi to Zoe. I apologize.
That's fine. I noticed that too.
This is Stu's daughter, Zoe. It's awesome to see you.
Say hi then.
Hi.
Oh, beautiful. So welcome. It's great to have you on. And she's one of our young leaders. So very excited to have her show up and make her appearance. And I don't know what your question was there, Peter, so I apologize. I got distracted, and a very worthy distraction, Zoe. Thank you for showing up tonight.
I'm just basically saying, like, if you're putting forward like the idea of like leadership or communication or instruments or something like that, how do you look more into that, or what's the next step with that?
Yeah, so what we can do is I can create a Telegram group, or we have already the Peaceful Inner Warriors United Assembly group. So if we go there, thank you for that reminder of that prompt as to how to do the thing that I'm asking, which is necessary for clarity. So the Telegram group that you can join, which is conversational, I just shared into the chat group there. So if you want to think about, I'm going to write out the questions as well. And if you want to add in any other questions that we can just, what skill set do you have? How would you like to be plugged in? So by all means, you can check out the Telegram group there and contribute. And yeah, all right, we got two of Collins. We got the Phantom in the room now.
No, my phone's dying.
Oh.
So I'm coming on with my iPad.
Oh, well, thank you. It's awesome. I appreciate you for being here and jumping on, Colin. It's been a few years, and so it's awesome to have you here.
Thank you kindly.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, yeah, so we've got the Telegram group, and I know everybody that is in here except for Alan. If you would shoot me your email address, actually, I would love to keep you abreast of what's going on. And if everyone else put your email in the chat, you can either private message it to me or do it publicly, and then I'll just grab the email addresses, and then we can have a smaller group. It needs to stay private until it's time to go public. So there's a lot of shifting, but the email is a good way to correspond. And then at least we don't have to pay for emails yet. But, there's a lot of changes that once they get us addicted to things, then we have to pay to do the thing that we used to do for free, right?
Yes.
Crazy. So, anybody else have anything you want to say or ask before we go? Thank you, Alan. I got that.
Is like, anybody else want to chat before I step in again? I was thinking kind of that question, Peter, like, what can I give to a group? And it brought up like this thing, the second sentence I wrote, what did I write? I'm a leader of awareness that no one is as an individual, and establishing my status, my standing and capacity. Now that's a term that we use like when you go into the system, like, what am I? Am I a person or an individual? And then my standing is like, as a person or an individual. Once that's established, what can I do? And then what powers do I have? And I think that relates to, outside of the courtroom and figuring out like, what am I? What do I have to give? And how can I do that? And then in what powers does that give out into the world, right? And I kind of think that's what Laura wants us to do. Figure out what strengths we have. And then, because there's a strength that I have that some person may not have, right? And they have a strength that I may not have. The idea is just to be strong together, because you can't like do one finger, but if you do like 5 fingers, it's a lot stronger. So your status, your standing, and your capacity in the world, not only in courtrooms, but.
Love that. I love that, Megan. Yes. Yes. Fabulous. I love this. Yes. Definitely making note of that. Yeah. Cool. This is the power of masterminds. When 2 or more gather on a common issue or common ground, great things take place, because it's the power of the expanded energy, which is where I mentioned about collective consciousness. Like, that's the same kind of thing. It's like entities accrue energy based on what is fed, right? So when the collective consciousness caps our reach or range, because then now we've got this collective that captures us, that's a problem. But that's the umbrella, that's the corpse. These are the subtleties that if we actually figure out how to remove those, then we see, like, the Wizard of Oz was just a little man standing behind a green screen.
Mm-hmm.
This is amazing. All right. Well, thank you very much for showing up. I'm turning the recording off. So if anybody wants to say something, okay.